Okay, good morning. We're up to Siman Shin Aleph, Sif Lamed Vov. Mutalot says b'Shabbos b'shnei malbushim ze al gav ze. You're allowed to go out on Shabbos into Rosh Hashanah wearing two items of clothing, one item of clothing on top of another one. Bein letzarchei, bein letzarch havera. Whether you're transporting it for yourself or for your friends. Bein shem shnei chalukim. Whether it's two shirts. Bein shem shnei sarbolim. What is a sarbol? Pirush sarbol. Ksus ha'elyon, like an outer garment, so some sort of jacket or coat or something like that. Bein shem shtei chagore zu al gabizu, whether it's two belts, one on top of the other. Fa'afilu ein malbush mafsik beinehem, even though there is no item of clothing in between the first and the second belt, and therefore really there's little function for the second belt. You're allowed to go out wearing these two belts. So that's the first opinion brought here. That of the Shulchan Orach. So you can wear two items of clothing, whether it's a shirt or a jacket or something like that, and even two belts, one on top of the other. However, the Ramah says, V'yesh oisrim shtei chagore ze al ze. That the Ramah says there are those who prohibit wearing two belts, one on top of the other, and imkein malbush mafsik beinehem, unless there is some sort of item of clothing underneath the second belt, that it's functioning as a belt. And it's appropriate to act in that way, to conduct oneself to not wear two belts, one on top of the other, but to only wear a second belt if it's over an item of clothing. You're allowed to wear two hats, one on top of the other, and so too you can wear two pairs of these longer socks on Shabbos. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah. So you're allowed to wear two items of clothing, two jackets, two shirts, whether it's for you because you want to transport it from place A to place B, or for a friend. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Kuf Hamad Beis, Bein L'tzorech Havera, Af Agav She'ein Lo Shum Hanoah Bozeh. Even though you don't get any benefit, it's not functioning as extra warmth because you're cold, but you're doing Afilu Hachi Lo Mechzik Kamasui. Nonetheless, even though you're doing it to transport it, let's say, or to move it, or whatever the reason you're doing it for, it's not a problem of Hoitzah, because lo mechzik kamaso, it doesn't look like a burden. Because you're wearing it. It's got a din of an item of clothing, and therefore it's okay to wear the second shirt or jacket in this way. Now, when it comes to belts, we saw there are two opinions. The Mechaber says it's mutar, but the Ramah says yesh oisrim. So it says the Mishnah Berurah Kuf Lamed Gimel, v'yesh oisrim shtei chageres v'loi domi. It's not the same as wearing two items of clothing, but people do wear because it's cold. But when you're wearing two belts, what benefit is there? When you wear two jackets, two sweaters, then I understand that it's derech malbush, but wearing two belts, there's no functionality of that. What benefit is there? Ve'in derech lachgar or masuhu. And therefore it's not the way to wear two belts, and it's a masui. Now, the question is, what about wearing a gartel? A person with Hasidic Olam, they wear gartels at the time of davening, and what if you've got a belt on already, and you want to put a gartel on top of trousers and things like that? So if you take a look at footnote number 89, he says, gartel b'Shabbos, where you're already wearing a belt and you want to put on a gartel on top of that, that indeed it's a problem. That if you are wearing, let's say, trousers, and you've got a belt on those trousers, and then you put a gartel on top of that, indeed it's asa. But if you're wearing it on an outer jacket, so says Ramosha that to wear it straight over your belt is a problem. But if you're wearing the gartel, let's say, over a jacket, even though your trousers have a belt, that would be okay, because the gartel is functioning as a belt for the jacket, and only then would it be mutar. However, Me'idach, if we look at the top of the beginning of the next paragraph of the footnotes, footnote 89, Me'idach b'shalit shuvas minchas Yitzchak cholek. Dain Weiss argues with the Ramosha, has v'soive, and he holds shekiven shebeshas hatfilah meshamesh hagartel katachshit, since the gartel is functioning as an item of jewelry or some sort, has its own separate function. For those who are makbid to wear a gartel during davening, and therefore the Minchas Yitzchok, the advice, is of the opinion that wearing a gartel, even if there's no beged that it's for servicing, it's still mutter because it's got a din of a tachshit, and that makes it okay. All right, continuing the Mishnah Berurah. That either way, wearing a second belt, even though the Ramah says yesh oisrim, the issa would only be midrabanan. Kimin shal kol ponim derech levishahu. This is the normal way of wearing this belt. And it's also mishum demechzik maso. It's just that it's also because it looks like it's a masui, it's a bird, and you're carrying something which is not malbush. For kolshkein lachker patzailika ala chageira. What is that? To midpachas. Yeah, some sort of scarf. Wearing that al hachageira on top of clothing. The ein derech lachker bekach, because you don't normally do this. The also v'achai adam kosov the bezel fila der rishena. Also the kimish ein derech lachker bezeh bechol, but you don't normally do this during the week. Min kalakol shema'arim lahitzi, that it's evident that you're doing a harama, you're doing a trick just to carry this out. V'afilu b'karmelis also, and therefore even in a karmelis, which is hitzah midrabanan, would be prohibited. V'taz sifkat yudalad nosen eitza. He gives you some advice. Sheyichabe reish ha'palatzika b'reish ha'chagere ba'aniva. You tie the scarf and the belt together, so that just makes it a long belt, and that way you can carry the scarf because now it's functioning as a belt. And then you can take this scarf with it. And therefore doing that with a hefsek malbush is okay. So long as the belt is over the clothing, over the trousers, for example, that would be okay. But you can't take this scarf and wrap it around your leg, because then it's not considered the item of clothing at all. But you should do it like we mentioned previously, like making the long belt, or you use it as a head, like a scarf around your neck, because that is a derech malbush. Okay, and this Kuf Lamed Daled, and the Ramah finished off and says, you're allowed to wear two hats, one on top of the other. Says in the Mishnah Berurah, Gartel, Gartel. Some people wear, he translates at the bottom, Chagar HaTachton v'Chagar Elyon, like an inner belt and an outer belt. So for example, the inner belt is just functioning, but the second one is considered nice, and it's a nice item of clothing. And you do that, you put the nice one over the inner one, or the outer one is shorter. In that situation, shari. That you don't protest against those people who have the minhag in those communities to wear them in this way. That some women wear a belt, and they have a second belt lower down over the sort of a skirt, over a beged, and because it serves to sort of raise the hem of the underskirt or something like that. And they do it to raise the hem of the skirt so that it won't drag and get dirty from the dust and the dirt on the ground. Because again, there's a reason for it. There's a purpose of wearing this belt to raise the beged, and that's okay. So he says, what's that going on? Kuf Lamed Hey. Sorry, I was wrong. The Kuf Lamed Daled was going on the Shtei Chageres. Kuf Lamed Hey is going v'chein roi linhoik, i.e., not to wear two belts one on top of the other. Al kain shlof mantel shetofu bohem yona, some sorts of pajamas, some sorts of nightwear. If you want to wear a belt on top of that, you undo the belt that's already in it, the bottle because it's considered bottle once it's stitched in. But if you're wearing two belts, one on top of the other, then it's considered a masu, and that's why it's a problem. And then lastly, shnei kovoim shekein darka b'chol losum kova gadol al gabi kova cotton. The minig is that people do wear a hat over a couple or a smaller hat. That would be allowed. V'chein shnei anpilos, or two long socks al kol regel davi kashnei sarbolim, because you're allowed to wear two socks if it's very cold or for whatever reason. Just lastly, this point about a bottle hulagabe beged shach shetofaboy, when a belt is bottle to if it's sort of stitched into the beged, that comes on to the interesting question of wearing a raincoat or some sort of jacket, and you've got a belt which is sort of tied in, attached to the raincoat, but it's not done up. Is that a problem? So if you look at note 91, he says the following: the Indian lot says bina'al im sruch sharoi likshaboy, to go out first of all with shoes where the laces are thread through the holes of the shoe, but you haven't actually done your laces up. Is there a problem to go out on Shabbos with shoes which have laces which are just not tied? It's like a modern fashion with some kids. They go out with trainers, with sneakers, where the laces are totally not done up. Is that a problem? So das Hagon Shlomo Zalman Auerbach in Shmir Shabbos shemuta. It's actually okay. You're allowed to go out with sneakers or shoes where the laces are not done up. Afimein hasruch tofer banal shekiven she'osu liksher by esanal harihu chelek me'anal, because it's considered part of the shoe and therefore it's bottled to the shoe. V'chein das Hagon Nissim Karelitz v'Hagon Chan Kanievsky. Now, v'lotzes b'chagura she'ina choyge bo es habeged koes, and therefore similarly, going out with a coat, so like with a raincoat which has got a belt but is currently not done up, v'af eina tefura boy, and it's not stitched in, it's not sort of connected, it's a loose belt which is sort of maybe thread through some loops or something, and Orach mushchalas blulois hasuyas lekach, it's just sort of fed through these loops. Das Hagon Shlomo Zalman Auerbach shemuta, that's okay. So you're allowed to go out, says Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, with a coat where you've got a belt on this raincoat which are just merely thread through the loops, but it's not tied up. Shekashem shesor chanal nechshav chelek mehanal af b'shah she'eina kosher b'es hanal. Well, just like the shoes, you're allowed to go out with shoes which are not done up, the laces are just untied. Kach nechsheves hachagura chelek mehabeged. So too, the belt of this raincoat is also considered a part of the beged. Af b'shah she'eina choyge b'es habeged, even at a time where it's not serving as a belt because it's not done up. V'chein kosa b'shah shuvas chelkas Yaakov, ela shehosef shekol zeh shechager asuya b'ofen she'ein chashash shetipol she'em lo yikein osel al seisimo mechashash shetipol v'yovel l'tatlo. Just to be careful that if it is not done up, that there shouldn't be a chashash that it will fall out, because then you might come to carry it. So long as there's no chashash that it will fall out, wearing a raincoat with a belt which is not done up would be okay. So just to summarize, you're allowed to wear two items of clothing, one on top of the other, whether it's a shirt or a jacket or a coat or something like that. Whether you're doing it to take it for yourself or for your friend to take it to another place, that would be okay, because it's not considered hotzah, because it is a malbush. And regarding wearing two belts, the Mechaber says it's allowed. However, the Ramah says yesh oisrim to wear two belts one on top of the other, unless there is a malbush, there is some sort of there is an item of clothing that the second belt is functioning. And therefore, when it comes to a gartel, Ramosha says the same thing applies, that wearing a gartel on top of a belt is a problem, but if you're wearing the gartel on top of a jacket, that's okay, because it's serving as a belt for that item of clothing. However, the Minchas Yitzchok says that it's okay to wear a gartel straight over the belt, because it's got a din of a tachshit for those people who wear a gartel for davening, etc. And regarding where the Mishnah Berurah, the Ramah says you can wear two hats one on top of the other and two of these long socks, no problem. And regarding going out with shoes where the laces are undone, that's okay, says Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. And so too, wearing a raincoat where the belt is not actually tied up, even if it's not stitched into the coat, again, that would be okay, so long as there is not a chashash that it might fall out.